Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. From 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning there, UCY.TV radio listeners. I hope you're well. Also, a shout out to Eugene Peaceworks radio listeners, who also carries this show as well. Hello, YouTubers. My name is Jerome, and I am the Sane Environmentalist, and this is the Age of Fission radio show for April 19th, 2018. It is 8 o'clock in the morning, Western Time. I am in Eugene, Oregon. It looks like we're going to have a sunny-ish day here. We've got this heavy, foggy haze, but behind it, I can detect actual blue skies. So there's a chance we'll get some good sun today. That's always a real gift when you're in this part of the country, because it's not sunny all the time. So, today's show is, I guess I'm going to start out with what I'm going to start doing on Thursdays, is I'm going to go through the current event notification report for the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission first. And I guess to start out, we've got San Onofre in California. This event has been retracted. The date was 6/27, and 4/18 was the last update on this. And what happened is a non-licensed contract employee had a confirmed positive for alcohol following a cause for fitness for duty test. The employee's access to the plant has been terminated. So apparently this guy was drunk on the job at a nuclear plant. That's really good, isn't it? Next one, Kaiser Permanente Medical Care Center of Southern California in Los Angeles. The regional RSO Kaiser Permanente Medical Care Program contacted the LA County Radiation Management on April 10th, 2018 to report a medical event that occurred at the Kaiser Therapy Department on March 28th, located in Los Angeles. The event occurred during an HDR high-dose rate brachytherapy procedure in which the Iridium-192 source did not fully retract post-treatment and remained in the transfer guide tube for about 5 centimeters from the cylinder transfer guide tube connector. The The source remained in this position between the patient's thighs for approximately 15 minutes. This resulted in the patient receiving about 300 rads to the thighs. It was later determined that the source wire was bent near the source, which is suspected to be the reason the source did not retract fully. So why are we continuing to radiate people? They get cancer from radiation, and then we use radiation to treat the cancer. That somehow just doesn't seem right to me, folks. I don't know. And let's see, another one here. Lost radioactive material. Okay. We always like to hear that, don't we? This is United States Navy in Virginia. 4/18/2018. A Marine Corps CH-53 helicopter crashed around 2:53 Pacific Daylight Time on April 5th, 2018, at the outlying landing field of the Navy Air Facility in El Centro, California. This helicopter carries 7 in-blade inspection systems, 1 per blade, and each one carries a strontium-90 source with an activity of 0.5 millicuries. The U.S. Navy was able to retrieve 5 of the in-blade inspection systems, but 2 of them were not located after several surveys of the aircraft and the surrounding area. The U.S. Navy is reporting that these 2 sources are lost for a total of 1 millicurie of strontium-90. The license has been, let's see, they found the 6th one buried under a fuselage wreckage, and that leaves only 1 strontium-90 source missing. So they did not find, so there's a missing strontium-90 source. Okay, Cook, Michigan, power reactor. Fitness for duty was the issue here, and that was 4/18/2018. On 4/18/2018, at approximately 3 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, a contract cleaning employee notified her supervisor that she found an oven mitt and a bottle containing a liquid that was possibly urine. The bottle had a temperature strip and heating element attached to it. These items were found in the trash in the bathroom in the training center located near the bathroom for the fitness for duty testing. The supervisor notified security. Security responded and took possession of the objects. So what that means is this, that some nuclear worker was doing drugs of some sort and having to do a random urinalysis test. And they have these kits that kind of, they've got a little bottle of fake urine in them and a little heating element so the temperature stays right. And there's a temperature test strip on the little bottle so you can verify that it is at body temperature so that you can basically fool a urinalysis test for drugs or alcohol. So we've got guys basically running nuclear power plants stoned. Or worse, who knows. I would call that fitness for duty. I would call that unfit for duty. I really would. So one of my subscribers on YouTube left me a link. And, you know, I'm not much of a conspiracy theory, guys. You know that. I'm not one of those. I don't get out on a limb or on a whim with things that could be or possibly very often. But this story really did pique my interest because it talks about the Great Pyramid and the fact that the Great Pyramid, or the theory, that the Great Pyramid could have been, very well could have been, seems even to be designed as a plutonium processing mill. And I know that sounds insane, But when you think about it, when you look at the science of it, when you look at the structure of it, you could see that, indeed, that would make a very secure and workable plutonium processing mill. Not a reactor, not necessarily a power plant, although probably it did have a small power plant just to run the operations within the pyramid. But I did a video on this on YouTube, and I'm going to play that video for you guys. And so let's see what we got here, if I can pull this one off. And what they postulate on this website is really rather remarkable. They postulate that the Great Pyramid is actually a plutonium processing facility, long since retired. And the evidence is really quite convincing to me personally. I've been studying the Great Pyramid since I was a young guy. So it was, for me, it's always been a fascination. As long as I can remember being aware of stuff, the Great Pyramid was a curiosity to me. So this paper that I'm going to read from was originally reviewed and published in the Meta Research Bulletin, Volume 10, November 3rd to September 15th, 2001, by Meta Research Incorporated. It's a scientific nonprofit dedicated to supporting promising and unpopular alternative ideas in astronomy. The abstract reads as such: the complexity, precision, and size of the Great Pyramid are contrasted to the simplicity of Pharaoh's tombs. It is proposed that it is a plutonium mill. Its perfection and construction, choice of materials are compared against all other pyramids. The current history of plutonium production is related. The internal geometry of the pyramid is given correspondence to the process steps of breeding plutonium, separating plutonium from other material, disposing of radioactive waste water, and production of hydroelectric power. The practical value of plutonium and the economic justification of the pyramids are discussed. Later attempts by the Egyptians to recreate power and value of the pyramids are analyzed. Scientific methods for testing whether or not nuclear fission occurred within the pyramid are defined. Introduction. And this individual is able to really get the idea across of just what it means to do this process. And it really was very helpful for me. The Great Pyramid of Giza has remained a complete mystery in modern times. When it was built, who built it, and above else, what is it? Conventional Egyptology declares that all pyramids were tombs for the pharaohs. However, the sophistication, required technology, and the cost of the Great Pyramid conflict with the thought that it is simply a tomb. This level of effort for a burial place stretches common sense to the breaking point. To quote Alan Alford from the Phoenix Solution, it is so crazy to suggest that the unique design of the Great Pyramid was a legacy from an earlier, more advanced culture. In my view, it is certainly much less crazy than continuing to believe that the pyramid was constructed as a tomb for a dead king, and he had built this totally engineered and revolutionary wonder of the world with absolute perfection at the first attempt. This statement was the genesis for this paper. It is proposed here that the Great Pyramid was a nuclear fission production mill, and it was technical and financial. It was successful. It did not create energy, but packaged energy within artificially created isotopes of plutonium. This hypothesis is not fantastic in the sense that it would be the best case for this claim is developed in the remainder of this paper. The approach is to drop preconceptions about religion and culture and look at the Great Pyramid as a business investment. The development of nuclear energy. The awareness and confirmation of the release of the vast amounts of energy from nuclear fission was realized in the late 1930s. The Second World War was initiated at the same time. The entire realm of nuclear fission quickly became a hostage to war and was placed under military control. It was developed not in terms of a new source of energy for civilization, but as a weapon for destruction. The fission bomb. There were two routes for making bomb material. The first avenue involved the extraction of uranium-235 from uranium ore, which is almost entirely non-fissionable, 238. Natural 235 concentration of 0.72% weight fraction must be purified to 80%. This concentration can be made to go supercritical, or in other words, a bomb detonation. This type of purification is extremely difficult, and it involves hundreds of stages of separation because the only difference between the two uranium isotopes is their very slight weight difference. This separation was considered so difficult that an alternate route for making a bomb was also pursued during the war. If a sufficient amount of uranium is placed in the correct geometry with a moderator, such as graphite or water, the neutrons released by the uranium-235 can be used to create 239 plutonium from 238. Plutonium-239 is bomb material and is chemically distinct from uranium. It can also be chemically separated from reacted uranium ore by solvent extraction. This procedure is immensely easier and simpler than 235 purification. Furthermore, a great deal of plutonium-239 can be produced from a minute fraction of uranium-235. This route is what they pursued at Hanford, Washington. The natural fission of uranium-235 releases 2 or 3 neutrons which have a high velocity. If these neutrons are allowed to pass through graphite or water, collisions with nuclei within lower the speed of the neutrons and reflect them back into the uranium ore, where they can cause more fissions of U-235 and can be absorbed by 238 nuclei. This absorption creates plutonium-239. Plutonium-239 can also undergo fission from returning neutrons, which releases 2 or 3 more neutrons. These neutrons can be reflected back into the uranium ore to create even more plutonium. The capacity for a rapid and geometric growth of plutonium is unlimited, and therefore a runaway reaction if the system is not carefully controlled. Control rods, which absorb neutrons, can be inserted into the reactor core to rapidly reduce the population of neutrons. This control material not only can prevent a runaway reaction, but it can be reused to bring the entire fissioning process to a halt. Alternately, if the graphite or water is suddenly removed from close proximity to the uranium ore, the fissioning process will also come to a halt. If a nuclear core is run improperly and undergoes a runaway reaction, the energy release will physically blow the reactor apart. The runaway reaction will then stop. Such an event does not measure up to a fission bomb detonation by several orders of magnitude, but it does constitute a conventional-sized thermal explosion and creates a radioactive mess. This happened at Chernobyl, which used graphite, as well Fukushima. If a nuclear core that was set up to create bomb-grade plutonium is run for too long, other isotopes of plutonium will be created. If their concentration reaches 7% or more of all plutonium, then the plutonium cannot be used for a fission bomb. The other plutonium isotopes interfere with the growth in neutron population being created by the plutonium-239. I'm not sure, I think it's plutonium-240 or 241 absorbs so many neutrons that it stops fissioning it absorbs all the extra neutrons, and so it actually stops fissioning from happening when it starts to develop like that. And basically the material cannot undergo supercritical. However, this mix of plutonium can be used to produce energy for civilized use. and this is the basis for breeder reactors. Such a reactor produces an amount of useful energy and also creates more nuclear fuel than it consumes. Through the breeding process, the amount of useful nuclear fuel within a uranium-238 core can be increased almost 100 times. This process constitutes a highly profitable venture if properly designed. Because plutonium was used in two of the first 3 fission bombs, which are used in more, the public perception of plutonium is limited to its use in fission bombs. It is not perceived as an energy source. It is perceived to be evil. In actuality, plutonium is inanimate and does not possess the capacity for mortality, cannot make decisions, and its behavior is completely predictable. Commercial nuclear reactors are officially powered by uranium, but in reality, 1/3 of the energy production comes from plutonium because it's made and consumed in the reactor core. At Hanford, Washington, 9 breeder reactors were built in succession for the sole purpose of making bomb-grade plutonium. About 15 monstrous process plants were also built to process the spent cores, extract and purify the plutonium, and segregate radioactive waste. The production of energy was a secondary issue. The operating lifespan of these units was short, none being longer than 24 years. Although graphite was used at Hanford, water can also be used as a moderator. In addition, a flow through a reactor can take away the released energy in the form of steam. This limits the temperature of the reactor and prevents a quote-unquote meltdown. So now we get to the official Egyptian history of the Great Pyramid. The official ancient Egyptian civilization history was recorded in hieroglyphs cut into stone. Even when paint was used on the stone, the symbolization was first cut into the stone. None of these stone records have ever attributed the Great Pyramid to a pharaoh or anyone else. There is no record of when it was built, why it was built, or for what purpose. There are no symbols cut into the stones of the Great Pyramid. The only symbolism found was, quote-unquote, discovered by Howard Weiss in 1837 in a recess above the King's Chamber, which was not accessible until he blew it open with black gunpowder. It consisted of only pigment and considered highly suspect. The symbols were completely out of character for how the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs were done. Therefore, his claim is basically debunked and placed in extreme doubt. There is no artistic expression to the pyramid. To quote Alan Alford, the builder of the Great Pyramid seemed to be only concerned with accuracy and stark functionality. Nothing was found inside the pyramid which related to any pharaoh by attribution or by possessions. Sarcophagus bears no resemblance to any coffin for a pharaoh. The accuracy and precision of the Great Pyramid, both at the level of individual blocks and as a whole, are without precedent. Modern-day engineers are at a loss as how it was done. The tools described as necessary for the cutting of the stone and the positioning of the stone have never been found, nor are they referred to in ancient records. The precise cutting of granite, including precise interior surfaces, requires complex powered machinery with industrial diamond bits. The raising and exact positioning of the granite blocks as heavy as 80 tons to heights more than 300 feet above grade would require huge, powerful cranes, according to the current industrial practice. It is just simply beyond the capacity of wooden structures and human laborers. The entire positioning of the whole structure is so accurate that modern surveying equipment and optical equipment would seem to have been an absolute necessity. The interior stones on the King's Chamber fit and appear what appears to be an almost watertight way, and a mortar was used in the King's Chamber, which has a higher hardness than the stones it was used on. The mortar was analyzed for elemental content, but it has not been duplicated. The construction was a hard industrial signature rather than an artistic one. Also notice the burn marks in the King's Chamber. All of the pyramids show pronounced degradation in quality of materials and cutting in metal materials and in their assembly. Hard granite was used only very little in contrast to the Great Pyramid, and not used in the same manner, with mild exceptions in the Second Pyramid and the Red Pyramid. In the Second Pyramid, the sarcophagus was also cut from hard granite. It has been observed that this sarcophagus was apparently better cut than the sarcophagus of the Great Pyramid. The answer to this curious exception is very revealing and will be explained later on. I'm going to take a break for 1 minute. I will literally be right back. You won't even notice a difference, I don't think. Thank you for waiting. So, basically, he lays out in this article exactly how they could have done it. Exactly what the process would have been. There would have been a reactor, basically starting in the King's Chamber and then working progressively down through the Grand Gallery as it processed plutonium. What did they use the plutonium for? And where is it now? If they were processing massive amounts of plutonium for hundreds, he said that it probably would have operated for about 1,000 years. And a lot of the waste, or all the waste, would have gone right into the sand under the pyramid through the quote unquote bottomless pit. I will leave a link in the description to this article. But he does just show exactly how that could be a thing, how that really makes more sense than anything that I could think of. You know, he basically lays out that here in the conclusion. I'll read the conclusion. Every process step for breeding plutonium, controlling the nuclear reactor, separating the plutonium and other radioactive material, and disposing of radioactive waste is taken care of by the internal structure of the Great Pyramid. Even the production of internal electrical power is accounted for. The why and the what for of this endeavor must be viewed from the perspective of sentient beings arriving at Earth rather than from our perspective in the 21st century in America. We produce a great deal of plutonium for the purposes of war, which in the largest sense is non-productive. These people would have valued plutonium as the most precious item to extract from the Earth because of its immense lasting energy value and its minimum mass. To them, it would have meant life. If you could select only one material from Earth to take back with you into space, and probably to another planet, what would it be? What other kind of energy source could be used anywhere? What energy source is placed on all places, on all space vehicles that leave Earth's orbit? What is the energy source choice of unmanned spacecraft in Earth orbit? The Great Pyramid could not be recognized for what it was until contemporary man had accomplished the same feat. Prior to about 1945, no matter how wise the man, he could not have reasoned out its function. All of the authors have been exposed to this general. Who built the pyramids? Why did they build it? We have no idea. Erica Miller, chemical engineer, Sean Sloan, mechanical engineer, and Greg Wilson, chemical engineer. So when this publishes to YouTube, I'll leave a link to that website. It is actually a very simple website. It's called nuclearpyramid.com. But he's able to lay out, really in a very scientific way, looking at it logically, how the entire complex there could have actually been a big giant plutonium factory. I don't know how else to put it. But it is true that ancients could have figured that out, or certainly if we had extraterrestrial visitors, they could have figured that out. It may just be that Earth is kind of unique, that we got that one or two asteroids that had that huge amount of uranium in them, and now we have, it's like more valuable than gold. If you look at the energy value of plutonium, it is literally more valuable than gold. So I'm not at all saying plutonium is okay or good, but if you look at it from a purely scientific standpoint, from the same aspect that, let's say, Star Trek, flying out in space, stranded in the Delta Quadrant, and they run by this planet and discover huge amounts of energy in the crust, but it's dispersed very thinly, so you got to either purify it or enrich it or create another thing with it. So I could see them setting up a factory on the surface to manufacture a fuel source, which they could use to continue on with their journey. I can see that. Also, if you look at the fact that the pyramid is indeed not a place that's designed for people to go into, you can just tell when you go in there and look around. There's no stairs or steps. It's shafts going at very severe angles. And if you didn't have the little wooden slats down and a little walkway with the little handrails, you'd probably end up just in a pile on the bottom. Also, there is a huge amount of water erosion or erosion on the shafts inside of the pyramid, especially the descending corridor. There's just a large amount of erosion. It's obvious erosion. And if you think about it, what could cause solid granite to erode in the middle of Egypt, in that area right there, where for thousands of years it's below sea level, or above sea level, excuse me. There's been no big flooding. And even if there was a flood, that's not enough to create erosion. That erosion equals consistency over time. So if something is eroded, then you can say for sure this is an X age because of the erosion that exists. If you know the source of the erosion and you can quantify the rate at which the erosion occurs. So these are all things that we were never informed about. We were told that it's a great tomb for a king, and they were rolling these granite blocks on logs through the sand and using weird wooden armed crane things to get them up and building ramps around, and it's just not possible. That's just not possible. There is a function to the Great Pyramid of Giza. It is, I think, what happened is the thing finally wore down. Maybe it was leaking radiation or something. And so they shut it down, and then they capped it with limestone so that nobody could get into it. I think the limestone blocks are like 3 feet thick or something over the whole thing. And what happened was the Greeks and the Romans stole the limestone blocks off of the pyramid to make all their statues and stuff with. So many of your Greek and Roman statues are actually pieces of the Great Pyramid. Because how else are you going to... It's amazing. The construction of it is amazing. So if this is true, okay, and this is all postulation and theoretical, of course, but I love going that way. I love going that way. And so I postulate that if this is indeed true, that ancient humans or somebody built the Great Pyramid as a tool to produce an energy source for an off-world customer Let's call it that. Then you could create the plutonium and beam it up, Scotty, and it's gone. And that would also explain why you're not seeing plutonium, which has a half-life of 24,000 years, so it would take 250,000 years to get to the point where you couldn't really detect much plutonium in any given sample of plutonium. And but you could detect the decay products of it, the daughter products of plutonium, which are even longer living products than plutonium is. So I did read the article, and it is a pretty long article and pretty scientific as well. But they did find evidence of strontium and cesium in the king's chamber and in the second pyramid as well. Minute quantities, but they did find evidence of it. I don't know if they found plutonium or not, but I don't think a lot of testing has been done there. And by testing, I mean get in there and really look for this stuff. Don't just stick a Geiger counter near it. You have to, it could be that the plutonium is just so weak now. I mean, if this grand structure, let's say, ran for 1,000 years, because it's that sort of engineering, producing plutonium for 1,000 years, it probably took any species, anybody, at least 100 years to build the thing. So you can add as 1,100 years, and then probably, I'm not sure when they would have capped it, but it was at least 10,000 years ago, because there's no record, archaeological or otherwise, of the construction process. They found some quarries nearby where they think that some of the rocks were quarried from, and using tools and hewing gigantic blocks of granite out of the ground. How did they pull that off as well? But it makes all the sense in the world to me that maybe what happened was that the ground underneath the Great Pyramid became so polluted from the plutonium byproducts, which were being literally pumped into the sand under the thing. See, that's the only catch that I could see with this, is that it would be a filthy, filthy thing, okay? Because it would have open vents to the atmosphere. Basically open vents right from the king's chamber, right straight up, venting radioactive, tritiated, etc. steam from the fissioning process right out into the atmosphere. So is it possible they built it to be tough and you can't melt it and it'll stop the direct radiation, but you're going to get off-gassing and you're going to get other issues where you're pumping waste into the sand under it, and then after a while, you know how radioactive slime goes. It gets into the water, it gets into the people, and people start getting sick and people start dying. Is that what happened? And so they're like, okay, this one's done, and build a limestone cap on it, and then they'll think it's a monument or a tomb or something. They won't even think twice. It's just so giant and so incredible that how could they think anything but it was just a gift from God or something, And we went forward, and the Great Pyramid, imagine for how many thousands of years it stood there gleaming white in the desert before they ripped all of the limestone off of the outside. How incredibly beautiful that would have been, and how awe-inspiring and safe. The limestone, a 3 foot limestone cap on top of all that, plus they had giant blocks of stone that they had lodged into the descending passageway to block the ascending up through the Grand Gallery section off. And so you can see that even internally, when they shut it down, they placed blocks strategically to keep radiation or other things from moving about inside the body of the reactor or the pyramid, the factory. I don't know what to call it anymore. But that is stunning to me. I honestly believe that we might not be on the first round with this. We might be on a second or even third round. And it might have been that we didn't ever figure it out, but somebody else figured it out. Somebody from off-world figured it out, found the uranium, was like, look at that. Ooh, boy, we need to build us a purification system. Well, how can we do that? Well, we can't do it on the ship. I mean, we're talking tons of ore, so what do? Well, build a factory down there. Okay, we'll just send a crew down. It took a long time. No matter, even if you had anti-gravity lifting technology, just the cutting and the precision of the way the blocks were hewn it's an enormous task. Some of these blocks of stone are not only huge, but they're cut with such precision that you can't even, thousands and thousands and thousands of years later, get a sheet of paper between the crack between them. The blocks in the King's Chamber are waterproof. It is waterproof. And the what do they call that? The cement, the cement in the cracks in between the blocks is harder than the blocks themselves, harder than granite. You got grout that's harder than the stone that it's connecting. Think about that. How do you make a grout that's harder than granite? All these things lead me to the conclusion that I think, that humanity in our silliness is on the second round of this. And maybe we're doing better this time. Maybe, even though we're still filthy with it, we're a little better this time. We're at least using containments now instead of just venting to the open atmosphere. Maybe that's what killed off many people and has changed the entire history of the planet. And we just don't know it because it happened so long ago. There's no evidence anymore. The tools are gone. The technology's gone. The bodies are gone. The skeletons are degraded into dust. That's what time does. Time erases everything. And once it's erased, you really have no way of knowing. And the oldest records that we can get are actually of hieroglyphs, and all the hieroglyphs, none of them point to the Great Pyramid as anything, or say, well, that was so and so's tomb or this or that. Pretty much, the pyramids were just like a force of nature, I think. For the ancient Egyptians, they were already there, even when they got around. But when they were there, then they were more beautiful because they had the limestone caps on them. So and the Sphinx was newer and sharper. That whole complex must have been incredibly beautiful, and not built by humans of the time. No way. There is no way. I encourage everybody to kind of do a little exploration of that. Start looking at the things in the world which have no explanation and really looking at them critically. Don't look at them from any perspective, not from the perspective of a realist or a conspiracy theorist or any of that, but just look at the science of it and go, well, that just makes not a lot of sense. Why is the Great Pyramid aligned so perfectly? It's aligned north-south magnetically. Geographically north-south. So it would have taken surveying tools and aerial tools, maybe even satellite tools, to be able to put that thing there with that degree of accuracy. So, that kind of makes up my mind with that. Until I see evidence to the contrary, I'm going to assume that theory most closely fits the pattern of events for human history, and that humans indeed have been around for much longer, and in an advanced way for much longer than we think. You know, we attribute human history to about, at the most, 10,000 years. You know, but we might have been in this body shape state for 500,000 years, and we just don't know it because we never found evidence of it. You know, I honestly believe that it could be that humanity is a branch off, that humanity is actually not from the earth, that we are in fact an F1 offspring of an alien culture which came down to earth, and that's it. You know, and it could be that now today as well. That would explain, well, why did we all of a sudden, boom, one day we got nuclear fission? You know, well, why did that happen? I think maybe we found the ancient evidence of some sort and were able to decrypt it and reignite the process. But I don't know for sure. You know, this is all postulation theory, and the more I talk, the more insane I sound to myself. So as the sane environmentalist, I need to really kind of watch that. But still, the lessons that could be learned from just this postulation, just this theorization, are enormous. You know, I'm looking at a picture of the King's Chamber right now, and it looks burnt. It does look burnt. The walls are darkened and blackened, and it's not consistent. The granite's not clean. It looks industrial. It does not look like the roof is at a weird slant. It just does not look like a tomb. It's not beautiful, ornate, and fancy. It doesn't have any art, nothing. It's just a square, industrial-looking room. In modern days, it would be built with concrete instead of stone blocks. You know, but granite and water, those two things together could keep a nuclear plant processing for 1,000 years without leaking any massive gamma or neutron radiation into the environment, or alpha or beta. However, if you were venting steam from the process into the atmosphere, well, then you're going to be releasing alpha and beta and probably strontium and cesium. Okay, see, all this could have happened, and these products are all decayed and gone, and we just don't know it. But it could be that literally this process poisoned us. And so we had to basically fall back. It could be that humanity almost completely disappeared, and slowly, over the last 10,000 years, we've come back. You know, we don't know. We really don't know, folks. And what is our legacy? You know, think about our legacy. If humanity just suddenly disappeared right now from the face of the planet, gone, poof, how long would it take before, even with the giant skyscrapers of our downtowns and the huge dams and the other monolithic structures that we've built, how long do you really think it would take before that stuff was just gone? There's no evidence of it. I mean, your toughest dam, okay? And I think this is a good example. Oh boy, sun came out. The sun is shining. It's beautiful. Your toughest dam is going to last perhaps for 200 years. You know, it's gonna breach in 200 years, no matter what you build it out of. And when it does, water and erosion will take it all down, and within another 200 years, you won't even know that there was ever a dam there. It'll all just be mountains going through a valley. So the bottom line is, folks, that we don't know what our legacy is going to be, or what an impact we really are having. And we don't even realize, I think, in our simplicity that we are not the first ones. We are not the first ones. I don't think we are. I think we're the second or maybe even the third round of humanity that has gone, once again, our intelligence has not kept track with our wisdom. Our intelligence is what keeps us able to do this kind of thing, but our wisdom is a different thing. The wise man is not going to defecate in his own bed, cover it with a sheet, and then think it'll be fine to sleep in the next night. Because he knows it'll be bad. He has wisdom to understand that. And so it makes the decision to use a toilet. I mean, what we're doing is the equivalent of that. We're taking a big dump right in our bed and covering it with a sheet and thinking that it's going to be okay. Well, guess what, folks? We too shall pass. I think that is the rule. I think the rule with humanity is that we get going, we create horrifyingly poisonous things, and then we kill ourselves back. It could, for all I know, it could be a natural evolutionary process on this planet. That this one quirky species keeps coming back, and every time it does, it creates these energy sources or whatever, because it's not adapted to the planet the way every other species is. That is the quandary. Think about humanity versus every other species on the planet. Okay, humanity has special needs that are not able to be taken care of naturally by the planet. Okay, any human born, if it does not have clothing and blankets and warmth and protection from other things, and it'll perish. We need clothing, we need buildings, we need hot water, we need all of the things that humanity needs that animals don't. Animals don't take showers. Animals don't really sleep in beds, not out in the forest. They might make a bed of the natural environment and sleep that, but for a human, you'd wake up in the morning bit by 400 different bugs with some kind of infection on your foot. Whereas your fox or deer or other animal would just get up, shake them off, and do a quick itch and move on, because it's all adapted to the system, and then the system works with itself. We, however, obviously to me, are not part of this system. We're not. We don't groove with the rest of the flow of the planet. We're different. And because of that, we destroy the environment and we destroy ourselves. And I think it's like oil and water. Humanity doesn't mix with the natural ecosystem of the earth. We don't. It's like oil and water. The only way we can survive as a species on this planet is by destroying the environment that we live in, by literally defecating in our own bed. It's the only way that we can do it. We have to produce this affluent stream of waste products. Each and every one of us is part of it. None of us benefit the planet by our existence. I don't care how environmentally friendly, safe, and sound you are. Your very existence as a human on this planet destroys the environment. That's the rule. So, gosh, that's sad. I don't know. Do we give up hope? Or maybe try to gain a little wisdom. Maybe try to have an understanding that, yeah, indeed, we have to destroy the planet. But if we can move forward with that understanding that, yeah, we have to destroy it as part of our life, we can at least try to minimize the destruction in one way or another. I don't know how else to put it, and maybe learning about this stuff, maybe this time around humanity will be smart, and before we kill ourselves off with the radioactive poisoning, we'll stop and go, we can't use this. This isn't smart. And for that matter, nuclear weapons, not smart. Get rid of all of it. All of it. Probably if you got rid of all the power plants and all the radioactive crap out of our environment, the rate of cancer would drop to the point where you wouldn't even need to use chemotherapy anymore. It wouldn't be a thing. You know, you wouldn't. The only thing I can think of that would be a actually very useful tool using radiation is X-ray technology and CT scans, and those they're being able to look inside of our bodies to see diseases and broken bones. You know, imagine if there was no X-ray, your doctor would have to just guess. Well, it looks like we can either do an exploratory surgery or that part's broke right there. So medical, you know, I don't think we need to ingest radiation. I don't think we need to dose people with radiation to try to cure them. But using radiation to look inside people at low levels, it has a value. That's the only value that I could really think of. Somebody mentioned to me smoke detectors. They use it, and other detectors use it. You know, just like the wing inspection, or wing inspections on that helicopter. Each blade had a piece of strontium-90 on it. Can you believe that? Each blade, and they went flying all over the place. It crashed. Little boxes of strontium went flying out into the environment. They found 6. There's 1 still missing. So, you know, that did them a lot of good, didn't it? So, what we need to do is try to catch up with our technology, wisdom-wise, and I think the only way to do that is to step back the technology. Either we have to become more wise, which we aren't going to do, or we have to step back the technology to a point where we're not doing quite so much harm. And I don't know that there's a collective willingness. I don't know if you can steer the herd of lemmings away from the cliff there. You know, because it does get down to the individual in a big way. Individually, you know, we need to try to become wiser and understand the cause and effect of our actions. You know, like, for instance, you know, in any bit of litter you throw down on the ground, you know, or any shirt you wear. I saw a shirt on the ground the other day, and I thought it would be interesting to have a life story of that shirt from the time it was made and shipped to the customer and worn and laundered and worn and laundered and worn out and given to a thrift store, and then somebody else bought it and then went back to a thrift store and somebody else bought it, and then it ended up on the ground after a homeless person had it, for instance. You know, and that's the sad story of the shirt. I don't know, that's just anything, but there you go, and now that shirt's still there. Okay, that piece of plastic from the bag of chips that you know, just kind of crumpled up and looked both ways and threw on the ground is still there. You know, furthermore, the oil that it took to create that product didn't have to really be produced. You could have done that organically. You could have done that naturally if you had the will, if you had the wisdom to understand things are going to have to be a little bit harder and not quite as fast if you're going to do it in a holistic, earth-bound way.